Hello, I'm Don Hall. This is at Don Hall Works. And today, for this how-to video, I'm with Puka Pin in Stockton, California. Puka is a very talented potter and also president of San Joaquin Potters Guild, which takes care of the Central Valley in California. So, Puka, what are you going to make today?
So we're going to be making a closed form jar. So we're going to be making this piece as one rather than two separate pieces.
Great. Well, let's get started.
Okay. All right guys, so I have about 2 pounds of clay here, and we're going to start making this closed form jar. So as always, we're going to get this nice and secure on the back so it doesn't go flying. And I like to give it a couple little cones. If you're a bad wedger, this is good to homogenize the clay as well. Looks pretty soft to me, so we can just start centering. For centering, I like to take the heel of my palm in a diagonal force and then my right fist on top. I anchor my elbows on me for more support and stability.
You can follow Puka and the San Joaquin Potters Guild on Instagram.
Alright, we're ready to open up the hole. I like to point my thumbs and go straight down. My fingers are just gently hugging the clay. Make sure not to separate your thumbs. Little by little. You want to leave about ½ an inch at the bottom, just to be safe. Now I'm going to widen the hole with my middle finger, very slowly bringing it towards me, about 3 inches wide. And we're going to start off by making a cylinder, and then we'll start shaping it into more of a sphere shape. Alright, on to lifting the walls. I like to use my sponge on the outer wall. And I make sure to keep my hands together in a comfortable way. For everyone likes to do it differently. As I get it taller, I'm going to slow down the wheel so I have a little bit more control. Alright, so we got a nice tall cylinder here, ready to be shaped. I'm going to do maybe one more pull, just in case. Alright, so now we can start shaping. So I like to remove all the water from the bottom of the piece. And I'm going to kind of push towards me with the sponge right at the base to give it a little belly and travel up the wall just slightly. And you don't want to pull it out too much, because when we start closing up the top, it might start collapsing here. So that should be good. Alright, time to close the top. So I like to just take my thumbs in a forward force and my 2 middle fingers towards the piece, and you'll kind of see a little bit of a circular triangle appear at the top. That's what you're looking for. And always release and apply pressure gently and slowly. Once I start seeing it close up a little bit more, the wall thickness will get thicker again, and And so we want to thin it out a bit again. So I'll kind of alternate from collaring and finger throwing. Like this. And I'll kind of want to make like a little neck portion here. This is what we're going to work with to seal the clay in. Alright, so now it's pretty thick again, so I'm going to throw it with my fingers a little bit more. Some of it will come off, that's okay. And so once I feel like I've sealed it, I can take off the excess clay. And now we have to work on making sure that this is perfectly sealed. So you can take a little grip tool, a nice bendy one would be a good one. And you go from outside to inside. And just do that over and over until you cannot see where it was open. Sometimes I'll take my sponge. And now we have air trapped in here. So you can actually mess with the shape of this if you push in certain areas. So if you want a really circular sphere, I'm going to just put my hands on top and the side and push the air around inside to see how it changed shapes. See, now it's a little more circular. Almost there. I'm going to shape it out a little bit more. Alright, that should be good. I'm going to take away a little bit of the extra clay down here. Alright, last step. Don't forget this step. You want to get a little tool. This is my favorite tool. It's about 1/2 inch wide to separate the lid from the base. So we're going to be pressing this tool into the clay to create the joint that it will fall into, that the lid will fall into the base. Alright, so I'm going to pick where I want the lid to end, preferably higher up so you can have more room to put items in this jar. So I'm going to do it about right here. Alright, so I'm going to just very slowly apply pressure with this tool. And you want to be very even in your pressure. And slowly release. I have a little bit of a little buildup of clay, just cleaning that up. You don't want to touch that too much. And that's basically it. So now you can see we're going to be able to cut right here once it's dry. And they will become two. Okay. Alright, so this piece has been dried out, almost a little bit softer than leather hard. I've also poked a hole in it so that when it dries, the air inside has a way to escape, because what I have noticed is if this piece dries too quickly, like in the summertime, it tends to bubble up and it messes with this joint, and then the lid and the bottom will not fit. So it's better to make these in a cooler environment, but if not, make sure to poke that little hole in there. Alright, so now we have it on our Giffen grip. We're ready to trim, and we're going to separate the lid from the bottom with my needle tool. And I'm going to be putting it right here, and I'm going to be going straight in. Make sure you catch it. Oh man, okay. So this piece is a little bit soft, but make sure that you catch it and as to not mess with the shape here. But now we have them separated. really, really wet inside. So because I rushed this piece, I now have to dry the inside because the outside was the only portion that was dried. And I made this really thick as well, and that is a good thing because we're going to trim away all of this excess clay so it can fit perfectly. So really quick heat gun on this. Now that these are dry enough, we want to fit this inside of this. So we're going to be trimming away all of this on the bottom portion, and we're going to be trimming away at the outside of the top portion. So I like to use the piece itself as a chuck. Make sure it's nice and centered. Okay, that should be good. I'm going to clean up the inside as well, just for aesthetic purposes. And the top. Okay. And I like to do a 90-degree angle right here so that it can fit nice and snug. Okay. So now we're going to work on this portion. Cutting away all of this. Okay, now we're going to see if it fits. Still really wet in here. Okay. It's almost fitting. So you either have the option of continuing trimming here or on the lid. That's up to you. Okay, let's see. All right, so now that it fits, it still looks like there's a little opening here. So this is where I take my rip tool and kind of sculpt it into each other a little bit. Just a tiny bit like that. And I take it off to make sure it still is removable. And I do that over and over just to see if it's going to fit. Okay, and now we can start working on smoothing out the top. Okay. All right, and now that we're done with the lid, we can work on the foot for the bottom of this. And we have trimmed away a lot at the inside, so I do a very minimal foot with these. clean it all up. And we want to have a lot of extra clay because I like to personally carve these. Okay. All right, and this part I'm just cleaning up. Okay. All right, that fits. Okay, cool. So we're done there. All right, so as you can see, there's a hole at the top here. That is okay because you can just close it up. And we're going to be adding a handle there as well, so it will be closed. So I like to make a little mushroom handle, so I take about this size ball and I start pinching it for the stem with my left pointer finger and thumb over and over and over and over until I start to get sort of a mushroom shape. And then I take the nail of my thumb and kind of push it down to make a 90-degree angle to distinguish the head from the stem. And then I like to give it a few pinches up on top to give it a bit of a pointy hat. All right, and now we can attach. I like to make it flat at the bottom. There we go. And we're gonna do scratch and attach. Same to the mushroom. And because these pieces are very, very wet, we don't really need slit. So I like to just shimmy it on there. And with my nail, blend it in. Okay, and then we can take a little paintbrush, not too wet, just moist, and kind of blend that in. And I like to go back and forth like this. Makes things a little bit faster. Okay, so that's our little handle. Now we can start carving. And you kind of want to wait a little bit till it's a little bit drier than this, more leather hard. But we can start now just so you can see. I like to do 4 little divots so I can get it perfectly balanced. And then I just go in between each of those divots. All the way down, I just repeat this pattern. And then sometimes when the space gets too large, I add 2. And the last set of carvings right at the end. All right. And then you have the option of carving the bottom piece. That's up to you. All right, one more set and we will be done. Sometimes I flip it over. All right, and that's it. And add our lid. And there it is.
You can follow Puka and the San Joaquin Potters Guild on Instagram